Drafting your fantasy quarterback early is not always the winning formula to building a championship squad. We reveal our favorite later round quarterbacks to target on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Today, we are going to be discussing 6 quarterbacks that we would like to target outside of the elite guys, right? So not Josh Allen, not Lamar Jackson or Jaden Daniels or Jalen Hurts, any of the guys going early. We're not going to discuss them because, yes, that's one strategy you can go with taking an early quarterback, but also that really does hurt the depth of your team. So if you want to wait on a quarterback, we are going to give you our favorite options to go for. And we're going to start with our favorite guy in the second tier of quarterbacks, right? Like right behind those elite guys who are not necessarily going super late in drafts, but going kind of middle rounds here. So, Vinny, who's your favorite second tier quarterback to target in 2025 drafts?
Yeah, the second tier has loosely had so far Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield. We're looking at Kyler Murray, Bo Nix, Patrick Mahomes. This is kind of the grouping there behind the big four. We like to call them Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, and Jalen Hurts. So this is kind of the next group. Now, I'm not interested at all in Mahomes. There's too much volatility there. We've talked about it a lot. Yeah. Then we look at Bo Nix and the potential of a letdown as a sophomore slump. And then you look at Kyler Murray. He's not going to run enough to give us that cheat code value. So it takes us back to Joe Burrow right there, right outside the top tier. Now, what we're looking for really when we're targeting a quarterback is someone who's going to far outplay their ADP and have a potential to be the top scoring quarterback on the board. Joe Burrow definitely has that potential. We know that this team's locked and loaded again with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins as his go-to guys. I think a few more weapons could emerge here as we go through the season. The Bengals are trying to improve their defense, but a lot of transition, personnel, scheme, they're going to have to fix a lot right away. But this team still wants to throw the ball quite a bit with Zach Taylor. And when you look at their lead back, Chase Brown, it's that type of back, right? And you versatile guy that's not going to be someone you pound between the tackles. They want to throw the ball a lot with Zach Taylor in control here. And I think Joe Burrow is going to be fine with that game plan because they need to get some leads. They need to put their position their defense to make some big plays off turnovers. If you just expose that defense, leave them in position where they're facing a two-dimensional offense, it's going to be really hard. So the Bengals are going to step on the gas, be aggressive, throw downfield, pass a lot here to not only get the most out of their offense, but to protect their defense. So that's all good news for Joe Burrow. Now, Burrow runs just enough. He's not a guy that's going to take off all the time, but he runs enough to pad his stats there on the ground. So not a complete cheat code quarterback, but somewhere in between where he's given us some things with his legs before he can take off and do that. So just enough there, just enough of the prolific passing that you look at downfield. I think when you look at maybe the best, like pure passing quarterback in this league, he might be actually the best, even ahead of Patrick Mahomes right now, because Mahomes has struggled, let's be honest, the last couple of years in pushing the ball downfield. Joe Burrow has not when he's been healthy. So really that's the only concern with Joe Burrow, Michelle, just staying healthy and just really taking full advantage of these weapons. But I think he's in great position to do that. So again, Joe Burrow, I could easily see him finishing as a QB1 overall. I always think of him, he's going to eventually have that 45, 50, pushing that level of touchdown passes and have an MVP season. So this could be it. Any of the seasons that he plays could be it.
It could be, definitely. Now, I definitely am on board. Like if you're going for one of these pocket passer quarterbacks, I think Joe Burrow is one of the safer guys to go with, even though you're not going to get a ton of rushing production. But with my guy, he's going later than Joe Burrow by a good 20 picks. And I do think he has the same upside as him as we saw last year. Now doesn't feel as safe because Baker Mayfield, who that's going to be my choice here, he's had an up and down career, right? And Joe Burrow, as long as he's healthy, he's always been great. So I get that. But last year, Baker Mayfield was the quarterback 4 in points per game. Now he's sitting as the quarterback 7. I also understand why you drop him, right? Because 41 passing touchdowns last year. That's very unlikely for him to get close to that number, or at least the 40s again, right? Because he never had more than 28 before then. This is all true, and he lost his offensive coordinator yet again, but no one is more prepared to lose their offensive coordinator than Baker Mayfield. It's every single year. But then also when you look at what he did last year, there's room for growth, I think. Like, maybe not in the passing touchdowns because he did already throw 41, but he was missing Mike Evans for a chunk of time, and he threw 11 to Mike Evans even though he missed games. He was missing Chris Godwin for 10 games of the season. The last 10 games, he already had 5 touchdowns to him, but he's getting him back. He had to give Kate Otten the second most targets on this team because of the injuries to the wide receivers. You got Jalen McMillan coming into his second year. They drafted Mika Ibuka in the first round. I mean, he's absolutely loaded with weapons to target and get these a ton of passing yards, a ton of passing touchdowns. Their defense is not good, and I like on paper, it really doesn't look like it's going to be any better this year. And when you look at the games, just like he was so consistent last year, it wasn't just huge, massive games that skewed his ending season numbers. There's only 3 bad games all year long for him in terms of fantasy. So many big games. He had 10 games with more than 20 fantasy points last year. Only Lamar Jackson had more. So he had the same exact number of games with more than 20 fantasy points than Josh Allen and Jaden Daniels, and 2 more than Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is at 8 games with more than 20, with Baker Mayfield at 10. And when you just compare of who you have to take around, like who you're losing out and taking on when you're taking Baker Mayfield in drafts compared to Joe Burrow, the guys going around Joe Burrow are still some really good names like DJ Moore and James Conner, DK Metcalf, Joe Mixon. Alvin Kamara is going just 4 spots ahead of Joe Burrow. Well, with Baker Mayfield, it's Chris Godwin, Tony Pollard, Isaiah Pacheco, Tedoroa McMillan, just more guys with risk, right? So I do think they have very similar upside and very similar situations with stacked offenses and bad defenses. I'm just going to go with Baker Mayfield 20 picks later.
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's an either or. It means maybe if you don't want to dive into the first 4 picks, this is a good alternative path. And this is also telling you don't worry about Mahomes and Knicks and Kyler Murray and where they land in this group, because these are 2 guys that you want to circle the most. They have the potential to repeat what they did last year. It's just a different way of getting there. Like Joe Burrow has the same receivers and the same play caller basically that he's had for a while now. And then you look on the side of Baker Mayfield, there's some pluses, right? They invested more at wide receiver. They play in the NFC South. So some other things that also play into the favor. And you look, I do like what those coordinators can do for other guys, right? Dave Canales for Bryce Young, and then you have Liam Cohen now going to Trevor Lawrence. But Baker, I mean, he thrived in both of those offenses. So a lot of this had to do with Baker being successful. And I think he found his groove. And maybe just to be simple to say, hey, I've got really good receivers. Even when Chris Godwin went down or Evans was hurt, Jalen McMillan emerged. And now you have McMillan, you have Ibuka, you've got the tight end if you need it, and these 2 receivers on the outside. And again, as Michelle said, we're going to expect a little bit more defensive regression. So I think either is a good way to go. I like Burrow only because I think he has that QB1 upside overall on the board. While I think Baker Mayfield could finish exactly where he was last year. I don't know if that was a ceiling. That's a little bit my concern. Are you going to get too much of a value there in taking him? Where I think Joe Burrow, you could actually get 4 or 5 spots higher than where he can finish. So I do think they're pretty close. But again, these are the guys who target most. Don't worry about, okay, there's going to be regression in either guy. If you're looking for a pocket passer, that's going to be the best option for your fantasy team. I think these 2 guys are it.
Yeah, when you look at the second tier of quarterbacks, according to Fantasy Pros here in fantasy drafts, you mentioned it's Burrow, Mahomes, Mayfield, Bo Nix, and Kyler Murray. And there's just not a single thought that I would go with Mahomes, Nix, or Murray in this group. Like, honestly, with Kyler Murray, I don't even know why he's up here. But it's very clearly Baker Mayfield for me. And then I'm fine with Joe Burrow. It's just he is one of the more expensive guys as well. It's not as expensive as the top 4. but you're still paying up for him. So that's why I went with Mayfield. But we are going to get into even deeper guys now. So if you want to keep waiting on quarterbacks and you want to wait to the later middle rounds or, the 10th round or so like that, then we still have plenty of guys that we really like here. Now, maybe they don't offer that quarterback one upside or top 3 upside like Burrow and Mayfield can offer, but they're still going to be very good for fantasy. So we'll get to that right after a quick break. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by the Gametime app. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. I use this app all the time, especially on baseball tickets whenever I want to go to the Astros. And I love to make my decision like the morning of. I'm a very late decision maker. And this app is perfect for that too, because like I said, they have the best price guaranteed. You can see your view of your seats before you buy. The app is so easy to use, and their ticket prices are always going down the closer you get to game time. They really are just the best ticketing app out there. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, so we're moving on deeper into drafts now. So we're past that second tier of guys. You're still waiting on a quarterback. Vinny, how long are you waiting, and who are you going with for your favorite third tier quarterback in 2025 drafts?
Yeah, we've talked about him a little bit here, but I want to just say this is the guy I'm going to bang the table for most. It doesn't matter what tier. If I'm going for deep sleeper or higher pick, I'm going to try to get him in every draft. So if you're drafting with me in some league out there, you're going to expect me to take this guy. So you got to jump on it a little bit earlier. It's Caleb Williams of the Bears. Now, everything about this environment is just so good. You almost think like you have to knock on wood here to see, is it too good to be true with what Caleb Williams kind of stepped into, like the fortunes of this offseason in year 2. It was a struggle in year 1. Part of it, again, dysfunctional Bears team trying to get out of its own way, trying to figure out its offensive scheme. They had to change it right before the season and all that. It was just a little bit of a mess. The Bears didn't know where they were going. But they said, we're going to go after the big prize that everyone wanted in the coaching market, and Ben Johnson. And said, we need to get the best offensive guy going on the younger side with our young talent here, the first overall pick from last year. So, and you just look at the weapons, they're kind of totally full now, right? You just got people all over the field to take advantage of. So I do like DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, that combination. You got DeAndre Swift. He's a good backfield receiver. You got the 2 tight ends now. So everything is really lining up well. We've seen Jared Goff in the system have very good success. So I think what Williams offers that Goff doesn't is some running ability. He can pad his stats there, get to the end zone, scramble for some touchdowns, also run and pad those numbers pretty well here. So he's not going to be Justin Fields, what we saw in Chicago. Don't get him confused with that. But he's a good enough athlete where he can add those numbers where I don't think you would see that from Jared Goff. So I think he's just better talent than Jared Goff. I know they were both number 1 overall picks, but Williams was just stratosphere of his talent was just so high, right? I mean, Jared Goff kind of had to develop in a number 1 pick, where Caleb Williams has pretty much been like a number 1 type talent since he stepped on the field at Oklahoma, went to USC. So I think he's a can't miss guy. He's worked hard. He's a little bit different than some of these other quarterbacks where, again, he's very intelligent. He's going to push the ball down the field well, but it's also going to do it within the framework of the offense, playoff play action, and throw downfield. So he's smart. He's athletic. He's got a big arm. There's really nothing this guy doesn't have. Jaden Daniels had his fun last year as a rookie. I think it's Caleb Williams' turn to ascend and join him among the ranks of not just good reality quarterbacks with the potential to take his team to the playoffs, but also just a fantasy performer that we want to covet for many years to come.
Yeah, I really, really like Caleb Williams this year, and there is risk involved. I have him ranked though pretty high. Like I have him ranked as quarterback 6 this year, quarterback
Yeah.
7, like going back and forth. Now, a lot of that's projection though, right? With Ben Johnson, with these playmakers, that he's going to take a big step forward from his rookie season, and Ben Johnson can fix this whole offense. So I will say it does depend on your roster build already in the draft because Caleb Williams will definitely be on a couple of my teams, but if I'm drafting and I go with Ashton Genty in the first round, who is a risk, like he's a rookie running back, we haven't seen him in the NFL before, or a Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors, who we're hoping that can continue from their great rookie season, or just a Rashi Rice. You just keep building with all these risky guys. Then I might want to go with someone a lot safer at quarterback than also risking at my quarterback position. So my guy that I think is much safer than Caleb Williams without the same upside, but he still does offer top 10 upside. It's Brock Purdy. He's the quarterback 11 right now in consensus rankings. He was the quarterback 8 on average in 2023, quarterback 10 on average in 2024. And it feels like everyone's down on him from last year, right? And that now his rankings even lower. Well, it's like everyone was hurt last season, and a bunch of players are coming back, and Christian McCaffrey and Trent Williams, and you'll have Ricky Pearsall hopefully for the full season. Like those are going to be huge things, especially Christian McCaffrey in terms of around in the red zone to have your guy. I mean, Christian McCaffrey caught a ton of touchdowns in 2023. He didn't have that. So really the only guy he'll be missing is Brandon Ayuk. But even with all of these injuries, he still was very, very good from week 6 through 17. He missed week 18. I mean, he was on fire, putting up really great numbers. He had a couple bomb games in there with 2 disastrous, weather games with a snowstorm and a rainstorm. But outside of that, he was just putting up 23, 22, 21, 30, 24, 26, like a ton of huge games, even with the injuries. He started to run a lot more too. 323 rushing yards last year and 5 rushing touchdowns of 15 games played. And when you're talking about the last 2 years, games with more than 20 fantasy points, Brock Purdy has 15 games with more than 20 fantasy points. So on a week-to-week basis, he does have a very high ceiling. The only guys that have more such games are Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Jalen Hurts. He is 4th on this list. So he is right up there with those top guys that are going in the first 3 rounds of drafts. Well, you can get Brock Purdy, who's not going to give you a top 3 year. I don't see that. But he very much, I think, I would be shocked if he's not a top 8, top 10 quarterback this year. So I'm happy to take him at quarterback 11 later in drafts. And I feel very safe with him. And he also still does offer you that big upside in any given week.
Yeah, I just think this would be a pretty good combination if you're looking for super flex or 2 QB leagues to have, because you have one guy with upside, one guy is going to bring you the steady points. So I really like the differences here where we're looking at how you want to play your team, because we're all different. Some of us want consistency. Some of us want a 4 to 5 touchdown game to carry us to victory in a certain week. And we'll live with the weeks where it's like one touchdown with like 220 yards. We'll live with that if we can get those bigger weeks. So I think the cumulative effect of both these guys will be very effective in terms of what you're looking for as a starting quarterback in 1 QB leagues as well. I think with Purdy, there is just a little bit concerned about Ayuk and how much that he means. But again, you have George Kittle, you have Juwan Jennings, you have some other weapons here to take advantage of. Ricky Pearsall probably coming into his own this year. So there's that. And I don't know if they'll be as dependent on Christian McCaffrey this year coming off the injuries, maybe ease his workload a little bit, but we know he can also help Purdy a lot as a receiver. So I do like Purdy quite a bit. Again, I think there's always going to be a stigma with Purdy just because of the Mr. Relevant, and he's got to prove himself again because he got the contract that he's going to have to show that, he was worth this. Like, he's taking his team to a Super Bowl. He's played at a high level since he was named the starter and took over. There's nothing else really that Brock Purdy needs to prove. We've seen the type of quarterback he is, and he does really well in the system with Kyle Shanahan. So everything is right there. I just think he has a little bit of a capped upside, which is okay. I mean, some people do, and partly because the 49ers can also run the ball and be effective that way. I think it does help that the 49ers defense might have a few issues, and that'll help Purdy throw a few times. So I think Purdy is a fine pick. I think Caleb Williams is a fine pick. Just maybe ceiling versus floor, what we're talking about, but still better than some of the guys really that are ranked around these guys. Like, I think they're a little bit more, I think, reliable than you say Justin Herbert. There's some volatility there. We talked about Jared Goff and Dak Prescott having some issues. Justin Fields, we do like quite a bit here with his running ability, but I don't know if you're going to get a steal in Justin Fields the same way that we are expecting in the end, right? We talked about his ADP yesterday and how it's pretty low compared to where he's ranked. But Justin Fields does have a bit of a wild card because you don't know what he's going to do enough in the passing game or how much he's going to run. Where I think these guys are a little bit more certain. You know what you're going to get from Brock Purdy because of his offensive play caller. You know what you're going to get from Caleb Williams for the most part there as well. So I do like everything lining up for both these guys. And really, sometimes the supporting cast tells you where to go. If you've got the scheme, you've got the personnel, you're going to put up the numbers, especially if the talent. Both these guys definitely do that, have that when throwing downfield.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we're going to get into our favorite later tier quarterback. So this is like really punting the position. You're not taking a quarterback in the first like 12 rounds. You're just really waiting for it. But there's still a couple guys back there that have upside that we're liking for 2025. So we'll get into that to close out today's episode. Before we reveal our final two quarterbacks that we're looking to target in 2025 drafts, especially if you're just punting the position, I want to remind everyone that the Locked On NFL Top 100 will be released tomorrow, Wednesday, July 16th at 10 a.m. Eastern Time on Locked On Sports Today. The NFL Top 100 was voted on by the NFL hosts of Locked On, and there are some stunners in there. Don't miss where your favorite players were ranked. Subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Vinny, say you're punting the position in your draft. What quarterback are you targeting in one of the last rounds of your fantasy drafts?
Yeah, Michelle, looks like I have a certain theme to quarterbacks I'm looking at. I mean, you had one in my theme, the number one overall picks, right? We had Joe Burrow, we've had Baker Mayfield, talked about Caleb Williams. I've thought about Trevor Lawrence. I do like his potential with Liam Cohen here. I do like Bryce Young as a sleeper, two more number one overall picks. But I'm going with an older one, going deeper and going back to 2009 and saying Matthew Stafford could turn back the clock this year. Believe it or not, Matthew Stafford is on my list. And I've not always been a huge Stafford fan in terms of reality. I think he's put up a lot of numbers. Did change my mind a little bit when he fought through and won the Super Bowl and had some comeback years. So he's actually impressed me more as a quarterback who's put up the less numbers and hasn't been as great for fantasy, been better for reality. But this is a year that actually could restore his fantasy prowess here because you look at, I'm just going to start with two things here, Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua. I mean, these are the two most prolific guys when you look at yardage of the last couple of years and touchdowns throughout his career, Devontae Adams. So you got paths to greatness here. When you have these type of receivers, like there's been different combinations, right? We've seen Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, but going back, we've seen Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods and some other guys that have been in the mix here with Matthew Stafford. But I think overall, to put up fantasy numbers, Adams and Nacua are a very good combination. I just think the Rams are going to be just opening it up a little bit more with both these guys. And again, no offense to Cooper Kupp, but I think Adams has a little bit more left in the tank and to give them now because he hasn't had the major knee injuries and things. Adams has been rather durable here throughout his career. So now he comes in a situation. We know he's a good touchdown scorer. We know Matthew Stafford and his team likes to throw in the red zone quite a bit. So again, I do like the direction of this Rams team overall. They've reloaded their defense well. They focused on their offense this year. And Stafford, again, he's going to be in some games, say with a Brock Purdy on the other side, maybe a Kyler Murray on the other side, the Seahawks with Sam Darnold, and that offense could be revved up a little bit. You could have some higher scoring games from Stafford and this offense in general. Rashawn McVay is not going to be afraid to let him sling it around, especially with those two receivers, right? They're going to get open all day here. So, again, does Stafford have a massive upside? No. but could he easily finish in the top 12? Yes. I mean, he's got that potential. If he can get to the 30 touchdown passes, I think he'll get there. Last year, only had 20, but there was a year of transition, a little bit of hiccups there. This year, if Adams and Nacua stay healthy, I don't think there's any reason why Stafford won't throw 30 touchdowns this season, and 30 is already going to put you in the conversation for a backdoor QB1.
Yeah, I think this is our first thing that we kind of disagree on today. I'm not interested in Matthew Stafford even super late. There's just like the other guys you brought up with Bryce Young or even Trevor Lawrence or my guy that I'm about to talk about. They just excite me a little bit more, but I do get what you're saying with Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua. Stafford should be able to throw 30 touchdowns. It comes down to it's also Stafford's health, right, and his age. So just a couple things that are risky there. Now, I'm not going to act like my guy's not risky because we haven't even seen him start a game in the NFL. It's J.J. McCarthy for the Vikings. He missed his entire rookie season, yes, but now this is his team. He's stepping in. And just it really comes down to Kevin O'Connell, right? I want the quarterback in Kevin O'Connell's offense. And it doesn't really matter who it is. I mean, Sam Darnold, we saw never have a productive fantasy season whatsoever. Never even throw 20 passing touchdowns in a season. And Kevin O'Connell's offense, he throws for 35 touchdowns, scores over 18 fantasy points per game, is the quarterback 10 last year with Kevin O'Connell. And then Kirk Cousins. I mean, we saw him leave Kevin O'Connell's offense. We saw him also with the Vikings before Kevin O'Connell. Not a strong fantasy quarterback whatsoever. Quarterback 8 in points per game in 2023, quarterback 13 in 2022. Cousins was with O'Connell. And then Stafford's last year, because O'Connell was the OC with the Rams in 2021. Stafford was the quarterback 11. Also, like his only fantasy relevant season in like the last decade. So there's something about this offense, right? And then also just the weapons help a ton when you get to throw the Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson and Aaron Jones, who's a really good receiving back. There's just so many weapons, such a good offense that, yes, McCarthy might be a risk because we haven't seen him play. And yeah, I'm sure he'll make some stupid mistakes, but I don't see him. I can see him definitely having a season just like Sam Darnold, who was a great value pick last year. And he might even be able to put up a little bit more rushing yards as well because he has some of those rushing chops. So if I'm going to punt position, I want a guy that can surprise me. I don't think Stafford's going to surprise me all too much. So I'm going to go with J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah, and let me tell you this. I mean, it's not a coincidence we brought up Sean McVay, Kevin O'Connell, Kyle Shanahan, Ben Johnson, Zach Taylor, just the continuation, I would say, of the Cohen offense that you have in Tampa as well, and talented guys who can push the ball downfield. And what all these guys have in common, you have a good receiving duo in Tampa, in Cincinnati. You can go down the line here. I've mentioned the Rams and having that advantage. Michelle just mentioned what they have in Minnesota at those positions, Chicago. So really you can identify the sleeper. I mean, Purdy, we know, has been consistently having all the weapons. So we're kind of like choose your own sleeper, right? Build it up. Like, what do you need? You need a couple receivers. You need a good system. You need a team that's willing to pass it a little bit more, and a quarterback that's going to execute that offense, both throwing downfield and finishing plays in the red zone, right? To rack up the touchdowns that are also important if you're not getting that rushing production. And for the most part, these guys are not going to be known as, quote, rushing quarterbacks. I know McCarthy and Williams might give you the most there, and Burrow can do a little bit there, but you're looking for maybe underlook guys, and that's where you find them in the pocket. So overall, there's a theme here, and there's a path to finding these quarterbacks. Now, say we go the anti, and we'll get into those at some point where the quarterbacks we're going to avoid, like a Kyler Murray. Like, if he doesn't have the rushing upside, we're not sure about his receivers, the system is flawed. And those are all a lot of red flags here where we're waving a lot of positive flags with these guys. So I think there's something in common, even though our picks are a little bit different and we might not totally see eye to eye. I think these are fair guys to target because of their environments as much as their individual talents.
Yeah, and this will be a fun experiment to do for all the positions. We'll be getting into running backs tomorrow, our favorite guys to target in upcoming drafts for the running back position. Then we'll do wide receivers and tight ends to close out the week. So we don't miss those episodes. We hope you enjoyed today's. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.